What happens when a boss decides to step into the shoes of his employees, to see the world through their eyes, and discover something unexpected? Something that shakes his perception, challenges his assumptions, and forces him to make tough decisions. Let's dive into this emotional journey. There was once a man named Grant Miller, a successful businessman who built his company from the ground up. He was the proud owner of Miller Logistics, a massive warehousing and distribution company that supplied products across the entire state. Grant was known for being fair and efficient in his dealings. His company had grown rapidly, and he was well respected in the industry. Grant had a reputation for always knowing exactly what was going on in his company. But over time, as his business expanded, he became more detached from the day-to-day operations. His high-rise office had become a fortress where he made decisions based on reports and emails, far removed from the people who actually made his business run. One day, however, something changed. Grant decided to go undercover. He wanted to see the world his employees lived in, to understand their struggles and their challenges. He wanted to connect with the men and women who worked hard every day to keep the business afloat. He decided to visit his own warehouse, not as the boss, but as an ordinary employee, to witness firsthand how things worked on the ground. Grant put on a simple uniform, hid his identity, and set off to his largest warehouse in Brooklyn Heights. The warehouse was buzzing with activity. Forklifts moved swiftly between shelves, workers unloaded trucks, and supervisors barked out orders. The air was thick with the smell of cardboard, plastic, and the hum of machinery. Grant knew the workers had no idea he was the owner. He was just another warehouse employee, one who had to prove his worth like anyone else. The moment he stepped in, he was greeted by Tommy, a middle-aged warehouse worker who seemed friendly enough. Tommy was the kind of guy who had been with the company for years and knew the ins and outs of every operation. He welcomed Grant with a smile, handing him a set of keys for the forklift and instructing him to join a team of other employees unloading a truck. As the hours went by, Grant worked side by side with the employees. He observed their interactions, their struggles with management, and their tireless dedication. What surprised him the most was how difficult their work was. The warehouse floor was noisy, chaotic, and physically exhausting. He could see how the employees had learned to work as a tight-knit team, even as they were pushed to their limits. Everything was running smoothly, and Grant was beginning to feel the pulse of the warehouse when something unexpected happened. As Grant and his team were unloading another truck, he noticed Evan, one of the supervisors, walking briskly toward them. Evan was known for being strict and no-nonsense. He had a reputation for pushing his team hard, and everyone in the warehouse feared him. His strict demeanor made him respected by his peers, but also created a sense of tension in the air. On this particular day, though, something was different. Evan seemed to be on edge. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. He stormed over to the team and immediately started yelling at one of the workers, Kyle, a young guy who had only been with the company for a few months. Kyle had made a small mistake, misplacing a box in the wrong section of the warehouse. It wasn't a big deal, but Evan didn't see it that way. Grant stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. He had seen managers get frustrated before, but there was something about Evan's anger that felt different. It wasn't just a reprimand. Evan's voice was harsh and unforgiving as he berated Kyle, calling him incompetent, useless, and worthless. Grant could see the young worker shrinking, his shoulders hunched in humiliation. The others stood in silence, unsure of how to react. Grant felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. He had heard about Evan's tough management style, but witnessing it firsthand was another thing entirely. It wasn't just the yelling that disturbed Grant. It was the sheer venom in Evan's words. He wasn't just giving constructive criticism, he was tearing Kyle apart. Grant's instinct was to step in and stop Evan right then and there, but he hesitated. His undercover mission wasn't about getting involved directly. He needed to understand how the system worked, how the employees felt under pressure. Still, the sight of Kyle's defeated expression made his heart heavy. Evan's outburst was uncalled for. After the heated exchange, Kyle walked away with his head down, and Evan turned to storm off. That's when Grant decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. He pulled Tommy aside and asked about Evan's behavior. Tommy hesitated, glancing around before speaking. "Evan's always been like that," Tommy said in a low voice. "He's tough, but sometimes it goes too far. A lot of people don't like the way he talks to us, but he gets results, you know. We just try to keep our heads down and do our jobs." Grant didn't know how to process this. He had heard of managers who used tough love, but this felt like something else entirely. It wasn't just about results anymore. It was about respect, and that was something that Grant couldn't ignore. That night, after the shift ended, Grant sat down alone in the break room. He stared at the empty chairs around him, realizing just how much he had missed. The employees weren't just cogs in a machine. They were people, each with their own struggles, hopes, and dignity. And Evan's treatment of Kyle made it clear that there was a deeper issue that needed to be addressed. The next day, Grant decided to approach Kyle. He didn't reveal his true identity, but instead took on the role of a fellow worker who had witnessed the scene the day before. He found Kyle sitting in the break room, his eyes red from what was clearly a sleepless night. "Hey, are you okay?" Grant asked, sitting down next to him. Kyle didn't say anything at first. He just stared down at his hands, his fingers nervously tapping the table. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. "I've never been yelled at like that before. I know I made a mistake, but it felt like Evan was trying to break me." Grant listened quietly, letting Kyle open up. He could feel the frustration and pain in Kyle's voice, and it made his chest tighten. This wasn't just about one mistake. It was about the way Evan had made Kyle feel. Small, unimportant, invisible. Over the next few days, Grant observed the situation closely. He watched how Evan's harsh management style continued to affect the morale of the team. He saw how the workers were walking on eggshells, afraid to make even the smallest mistake for fear of facing Evan's wrath. It was then that Grant realized something. Evan's management style wasn't just damaging the employees, it was damaging the entire culture of the warehouse. The workers weren't motivated to work harder, they were motivated to avoid getting yelled at. There was no trust, no sense of community, just fear. Grant couldn't let this go on any longer. He decided to confront Evan, but not as the boss, as a man who understood the power of respect and empathy. When he sat down with Evan in the supervisor's office, he did not immediately reveal his identity. Instead, he spoke to him about leadership, about what it truly meant to manage people. He explained that while tough love could sometimes be effective, disrespect and fear were never the right tools. Evan was defensive at first, but gradually, something in him began to change. He had never thought of himself as a leader who needed to inspire people, but now Grant's words were starting to resonate. Eventually, Grant revealed who he truly was. Evan was shocked, stunned that the boss had been working alongside the team without him knowing. But it wasn't about that anymore. It was about understanding. Grant made it clear that while Evan's results were important, how he treated the people who helped him achieve those results mattered even more. Grant didn't fire Evan. Instead, he gave him a chance to change. He offered him leadership training, and he encouraged him to work on building a more respectful, supportive atmosphere in the warehouse. In the end, Grant learned that being a good boss wasn't just about the bottom line. It was about treating people with respect, valuing their contributions, and creating an environment where everyone felt heard and appreciated. And Evan, despite his tough exterior, learned that true leadership comes from trust, not fear. The warehouse became a different place after that. Workers felt more motivated, more united, and the tension between employees and management slowly melted away. Grant had learned a powerful lesson that day, and it was a lesson that would shape the way he ran his business forever. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the three dots near the share button and send a super thanks.